Workplace bullying rates decrease when countries have laws against it, but there are no legal protections from workplace bullying or mobbing here in the U.S., except Puerto Rico. Vicki Courtemanche, co-founder of End Workplace Abuse, shares more specifics about the proposed law that's a win-win for both employees and companies. I cannot tell you how many people who are struggling, who have walked away from toxic employers and coworkers, and they are suffering continually because they can't get work.
Mhm.
And they believe as if they've been blackballed or, blacklisted. They believe, those former employers have said negative things about them, that they've told people within their industry, here's somebody to watch out for. I mean, that is the story of so many people. And I just can't imagine that everyone's having the same experience, but yet there are people who say, well, that doesn't happen. It does happen. Why are companies not standing up and helping these people?
Mhm. Well, this, when you pull back all the layers of this, what you are going to find is the person who is the head of the legal department is, they're trying to avoid liability. And so that's it. Once you are a threat of liability, you have that tag hanging around you because every employer is going to look at you the same way. You're a threat of liability. And, and I didn't have that experience because I didn't end up going back to work. And again, as I said, I'm an older woman. I had a niche job and I was sick. I was so sick. I could not work. I was unable to work for the first couple of years. But there's this lovely young woman at church, and someone said to her, "Go talk to Vicki." And so sure enough, she was being bullied in the same industry. She kept going from job to job, and it would all start off fine, and within a month, they would target her again, the exact same kind of behavior, and she ended up having to leave her field that she was, had gone to school for and everything else. And she had to switch gears and go into another place where she was not known. And that's, how she has survived. But we do hear this all the time. A matter of fact, one of the people on our leadership team, she just, told us the same thing. She just was blindsided again. And we see it, but that's what it is until we keep pulling back these layers. Because everyone talks about the bully, everyone talks about HR, everyone, and like that was my big thing, was pointing the finger at the employer. And until we really look at the person behind the curtain, and that is the head of the legal department, they're the ones who are making sure that you never work again.
As you talked about the whole notion of loss of life, the psychosocial hazard, if you will, our brains being bullied because of the abuse. It's so real. It's so pervasive. So the rumination of the experiences can be devastating. And we've had a number of situations and stories. Dr. Antoinette Candia Bailey from Lincoln University out of Missouri, who took her life because she wanted people to be held accountable. No one believed her. And I know I see a lot of times the ad for the young man who used to work for Kroger grocery store.
Yes, Evan
And
Siegfried.
Evan, yes. And when I see his picture, I know his story, even though I don't know him personally. When I looked at Dr. Antoinette Candia Bailey's picture, I see the sadness even in her eyes, because I know what that looks like when you're trying to make it work and you're silent. Very few people, maybe your family and friends, may know, but you're trying to make it work. And when people totally ignore you and don't take you seriously, you think to yourself, well, what's left? What should I do? I've heard from so many people who talk about suicide ideation, and this is a psychosocial hazard.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Breaks when I read about Dr. Candia Bailey, because multiple reasons, but she was alumni of that university too, so I understand, so that for these people, I mean, this evilness of doing this to a person who, you educated that person, you gave them that ability to go out and to find a job, you hire them and then you abuse them and kill them. That is just beyond. And of course, they have all self-justified. They've had their own internal investigation and things like that. And those are other places too where we can keep shining a light. That wasn't an independent investigation.
Right.
They hide behind all these shadows, that the legal department, complains about. And, Evan Seyfried, too, I worked on a campaign with them. Deb and I did.
Mhm.
It's just heartbreaking. The family,
Yes.
but their lawsuit, if you haven't done it yet, read the lawsuit for Evan Seyfried that his family filed after the fact, because for people who don't understand what bullying and what the institutional complicity in it is, it's a blueprint. It is a solid blueprint of the people who were abusing him, his bullies. He had two, and what Kroger blatantly did not do. So it's one of those things when people they say, I can't understand what this is. I say, read this lawsuit that the Seyfried family filed, and then you'll understand what we're talking about.
Absolutely. When we talk about the Workplace Psychological Safety Act, I love the component, which is to have an independent investigation. And in full transparency, before I even knew about EWA, I just found you guys last December, early January of this year. Before I had even heard of EWA, I kept telling my husband, I should have had an independent investigation of my claims, because like you, I have all the evidence still on all the emails. I have it all. And yet I'm looking at it as an objective person, like I'm taking myself out of this and saying, if I were to read all of this, what would my conclusion be? Well, certainly this person was bullied. And yet, human resources, and as you mentioned, the employer, the legal team, they all begin to chip away at how do we mitigate our liability. And it is astounding that this is part of the playbook. People know it, companies know it, they're all complicit. They're all complicit.
Mhm.
And I love the WPSA because it says there will be an outside body that's not connected to human resources, not connected to the company, obviously, because we want to make sure that there's no conflict of interest. And I believe that having that bill will allow people who are the witnesses to feel, to have the courage, if you will, to be brave enough to speak up because they feel as if they will be protected as well. And obviously, for the person who's being abused, I love that. But I was telling my husband, I'm like, that's what I needed was an independent investigation. And yet, so many people who are going through this, they go through the process of finding an attorney. Maybe they file a claim with the EEOC. And naively, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, people believe that the EEOC is a finder of truth and fact, and that they will find they'll find help through the EEOC. And can I just tell you, I don't believe it. I've been through that process. I know other people who have. And I will just say that it is a performative body that does absolutely, I won't say they do absolutely nothing, but they don't give you the remedy that you're looking for, which is accountability and the ability to continue to work in your position without fearing retaliation from the employer. The EEOC just doesn't work. How do we dismantle that? Because it doesn't work.
This is this is a real tough part of this because we are so, the intersectionality of discrimination with workplace abuse is like so undeniable.
Yeah.
And the EEOC, actually, an employment lawyer that we used to work with a little bit, he said, if you go to the EEOC, the best thing that they will do is they will perform an investigation. And they will do that and it will be correctly done, but it's not going to get you anything. So it's like, why are you, what is there about this? And that is the whole thing is, they're the law that holds the EEOC. They can only work within this little line. And so here we are, we all fall outside of that one line. And so they are, and the same thing here in Massachusetts, it's called the Mass Commission Against Discrimination. It's the same thing. It's backlogged. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And we know that these two issues, intersect. But Yeah, it's
Yeah. It's heartbreaking because people think that there's a remedy, that they can, that there's hope in that, organization, that commission, or the EEOC, and there really isn't. But with the WPSA and having an independent organization, what does that look like specifically? How would that be funded? Who would be, what's the process? What does that look like?
it really is very blurry still,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
as we move along, when we this is our first session in Massachusetts, and when
Hmm.
you submit to the legislators, and you'll find out in your state, they're going to take that legislation and then they're going to vet it. Okay, so just what we put in there doesn't mean that they are going to buy that. They take it and they vet it
Hmm.
against your state laws. Okay, so
Hmm.
that's what happened in Massachusetts. That's what happened in Rhode Island. Those pieces
Right.
of legislation look very different than what we had proposed, and they look very different from the two different states. Okay,
Hmm.
so we're really early in this part of the, figuring out what it's
Yeah.
really going to look like. It's blurry because today's the 3rd, so 3 days ago, the bill died in Rhode Island, and
Hmm.
at the end of this month, it will die in Massachusetts. And then we start all over again.
Over
And
again.
we have to keep building and these are some of the things that they poke back at us, like who is going
Mhm.
to fund this? And that was the big issue here in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We were trying to get it put under the Mass Commission Against Discrimination,
Mhm.
only because we don't have a human rights um,
Mhm.
coalition or anything here in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
Supposedly that MCAD is that, but there's no funding. It has a little title, that this is where human rights violations fall, but then there's no department and there's no funding or anything. So that's what
Yeah.
we were asking for in Massachusetts. We were like, can you fund this division of MCAD so that we can,
Mhm.
deal with the human rights? And we were hoping in Rhode Island they do have a human rights commission.
Right.
And we were hoping that they would put it there. And again, they put it under the Department of Labor and Training. And so anyway, a lot of these things are, really blurry because we're at the
Mhm.
beginning.
I was just thinking, yesterday we just, today is the 3rd as we're taping this. And yesterday was the 60th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which we all know is supposed to be, protecting us against discrimination based on sex, religion, so on and so forth. And yet here we are 60 years later, and this is discrimination at its worst. It really is, because it involves everyone. It involves, especially people of color. There's that extra level of the racial component and implicit bias that's also a part of it. So it kind of exacerbates the workplace abuse experience. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if we're going from a state perspective, what if we just go straight on the federal level, go straight to the federal level? Is that possible by using the 1964 Civil Rights Act? It needs to be overhauled, if you will. It needs to be expanded. And what if we go from that direction so that the EEOC literally becomes the commission that does what we all think that it's supposed to do by serving as that independent investigation under the auspices of the federal government? Is that a possibility? So that way we don't necessarily have to work on all of these states, so that that way everyone has protections. It's not just statewide, but it is a federal mandate that we are going to protect our citizens from workplace abuse.
Hmm.
Is that a possibility?
I wish we could do that, but that it has taken time, as
Yeah.
you just beautifully said, discrimination law has been an epic failure. And
Mhm.
we can only sit here, we can look all around and see that it has done nothing. And that happened over time. And what happened in the 80s and the 90s was that they shifted that focus of looking of the impact it was
The
having on a
impact.
person
Yep.
to looking at it,
Intent.
so now they're telling you that, as you, instead of pointing to the perpetrator, you have to prove the intent of the perpetrator. They're not
Mhm.
looking at the impact on the person who's being abused. You have to prove the intent of the person who's abusing you, and which
Mhm, mhm.
is an impossible threshold to do. And so that's why it has literally just, put everything by the wayside. We believe, and this is why we're doing this, the state to state, that the best way to go to federal victory is by going state to state. And so
Mhm,
that is
mhm.
our strategy, but it does not mean at all that we shouldn't be trying all these other avenues. I just spoke to a new advocate recently, and she had suggested that we put something together and that we go to the Hill together next year and meet with our senators and everything else too. And I'm like, let's do it, and again, keep
Yeah,
working on our state. Let's do, get our states up and running, and then let's go to Washington, D.C., and let's have a rally there. There's no thing that should be taken off the table. We should be
yeah,
poking holes everywhere that we can and raising public awareness, because we don't know where that is gonna, where it's gonna come from. But yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, just everything is on the table. Let's just, go from every direction and see what sticks because it has to stick. Like I think about my child, my son who just turned 17. He watched me from the age of 12 to 17. I mean, 5 years watching me go through my workplace abuse experience. And it affected him as well. It affected him as well. And I just would hate to think that we are allowing because we refuse to do something that is really easy and we just aren't brave enough and courageous enough to do it because well it's not the way we've been doing it before, so we just want to stick with the status quo instead of looking at this as a solution. It breaks my heart that our children, future generations, will inherit workplace abuse because we fail to do something and it's within our reach. I tell people this is solvable. This isn't hard. It's just about making that choice to do so. What do you think?
hmm Oh, it is. Like I said, I never went back to the workplace. And I say that all the time. My children are in the workplace, and I have grandchildren that are going to the workplace. And so I will, till the day I die, I will keep fighting for this, because I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I would not, it's cruel and inhumane. I never imagined that people could be so cruel. Really, the evilness in it. So yeah,
Mhm.
we have to stick with it. We have to keep fighting.
Absolutely. Speaking of fighting, like I mentioned earlier, I got connected to EWA because I was on LinkedIn and all of a sudden it just kind of came through my feed. I went, oh, oh my goodness. And then I saw the call out for, people to be on this Zoom call on, I think it was a weekend. And I'm like, I don't know what this is all about, but let me look it up on the website. And I learned a little bit more about EWA. And then I'm like, well, let's see. Have you been surprised, you and Deb, to see the groundswell of support, if you will, that now, I mean, all of these state bill directors are coming up and saying, what can we do? I want to help. And are you happy by that? Does it give you solace in knowing that, our tears, our fears, our experiences, that collectively we're going to make a difference, knowing that there's such this, I don't know, a feeling, I believe, this feeling, this moment, and this momentum that people are tired of it. And we're not afraid to speak up and to talk about it and to make and to find change. I mean, this is all about having a solution. This isn't just about sharing our stories, it's using the stories as a vehicle to change laws.
hmm We are so happy that we have, because this was a dream, like we said, we just want to have a space where people can, work together and, fight this. And that's what it is. It's not, we cannot do it by ourselves. We have to
Mhm.
be a team. We have to be, we call them an army of advocates. We are an army of advocates. And that's how we have turned the tide, really, especially with our public hearings
Mhm.
in 2021. Deb and I were in a meeting and we were like, how can we do this? And we said, how about if we train people to give testimony, And
Mhm.
everyone's like, wow, okay, let's do that. And so we had, in 2021, we had 50 people testify together. And we thought, wow, this is really something. But this past October in Massachusetts, we actually don't know how many people testified because the legislator has withheld the information from us for the first time. They denied us the information. But we know from our Action Network that we had 689 advocates sign up to say that they were
Wow.
going to submit testimony in Massachusetts. And then we had another automated system that had a template, and so people could go into it, and we could see that 300 people submitted. So we had close to 1,000. And then in the weeks leading up to Massachusetts, that public hearing, all of a sudden it kind of went viral on TikTok. And there's
Mhm.
this woman, Dr. Mercedes Jimenez. She's
Yes.
phenomenal.
Yes.
She's corporate clapback. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Oh yeah. So she's on there, and all of a sudden she's talking about the Workplace Psychological Safety Act. And so there were many people after the fact who said, "Oh, I saw it on TikTok." And so those numbers we can't even count. So
Yeah.
to see in 2 years' time to go from 50 advocates to, over 1,000
Mhm.
advocates, and we didn't get numbers from Rhode Island either. So we're still kind of, there's some information out there. We're new at this, and
Mhm.
we don't really know where we sit. But what we know is that we have, stirred the troops, and that, and so people, we are acting in tandem, which is the only thing we can do for ourselves. They're not going to
Yeah.
believe me. They're not going to believe you. We can't even get our families to understand. So going to the legislators in force like this and going from state house to state house, that was one of the keys that we learned in 2021. We didn't realize that when you give testimony at a public hearing, you don't have to be from that state. So that was the huge game changer too, because now we could say, okay, good. We don't have to have 1,000 people from Massachusetts. We just need 1,000 people. And now what we said is, okay, so we have that 1,000 people. So now let's make it 1,500 people, and let's keep going to this and keep going together. So we have to, testify, next public hearing. I know you'll be there.
I will be there.
Yeah, and that's it. We want to bring everybody in. Whether you're there in Massachusetts, we had virtual. We were able to give virtual testimony. We had in person, and you can give written. And actually, there was pre-recorded video. In Rhode
Mhm.
Island, it was either written or in person, so we were limited. They used to have call-in. One time I testified right from home on the phone. Um,
Yeah.
and they eliminated that. So again, we just, we're going to go, and each state is different. So as we go state to state, we will have to find out all these little inroads of how we do this best.
Mhm.
And we're making a tally. But no, we're very happy that we are, that place that people can come
Yeah.
to and say, okay, they get it, they understand, they want to do something about it, and let's do it together. That's it.
Let's do it together. Well, we so appreciate you being, the leaders, if you will, of the army of advocates. You and Deb have been the generals, and I thank the two of you from the bottom of my heart, because it has given me such a sense of purpose. I thought I was just an army of one, because I
Mhm.
didn't know this was something. And I thought, well, it was just something that happened to me and I could try to help people. But I so am grateful that God allowed that feed, or that, email, not email, but the information, the ad, if you will, to come through my feed on LinkedIn, because it has given me an additional sense of purpose. I knew that this was really a calling when God said, I need to use you. I want you to use this, because if anyone will believe, if you share your story, people will believe you. Not only just believe you, but I've got the evidence to prove it. And I just don't want this to happen to anyone else. And so one of the things that I always say at the end of this show is that, if you're watching, whoever you are out there, I know there's someone who's watching who has said, people don't believe me and I'm afraid to speak up. And I just tell people, I believe you. If no one believes your story, I do. And I know that you, Vicki, you believe their story, because we know this is real. It's a real problem. We believe your story, we see you, and we hear you. And thriving, all of us, it's our birthright to thrive in this world. We were intended to thrive. If you're a person of faith, God wants all of us to thrive and to support and to help one another. How do you thrive in life now, post workplace abuse?
By fighting forward. That's how I thrive. My husband, he could on any given day just throttle me because it is my life.
Yeah.
I get up every day and I work at it. Um, it is kind of a life mission right
So,
now.
so
So that's how I thrive. And then I have to strive to try and take care of myself
yeah.
because I don't do well with that. So I
Mhm.
do during the day, I watch my granddaughter. So that's a busy activity, but I work on this before she comes. I work on this when she naps, and sometimes I work on it at night. So it is, that's my thriving, is knowing that I am making a difference. When people show up at these hearings and I see them own it, they walk away with that power back. They took their voice back. They didn't let them win. They used their voice to make change. That's what makes me happy now, is that when I see others come forward, that's what helped me. That's what's helping them. And so that's what I live for now, is when others speak up as well.
Well, thank you so, so very much. I'm tearing up because I just thank you. I thank you and Deb, and just thank you.
Now you're making me tear up.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
just
and
thank
again,
you.
how God has, given us just this place. Sometimes I can't believe it myself. I'm like, really, are we really doing this? And
Yeah,
by the grace of God, we are. And, we are not the generals. That's one of the things that we did not want here. We don't want that. We
that's
don't
true.
want
Yeah,
hierarchy. We want everyone to be a general. We're all
we're
generals.
all
We're all on the front line. We're all going to do this work. And that old saying about it takes a village to raise
just a
a child.
village.
Well, it takes a village to pass legislation, and we are not
Exactly.
one better than the other. We all, every one of our voices together is what is going to make the difference. So thank you
And that's you're
for
welcome.
doing this. This is a huge part of what is helping turn the tide out there too, is that we keep talking about it. So thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate that.
You're so, so, so welcome. It has been my honor. And people ask me all the time, what's the most important story of my 35 plus year career? And I've always never really had the same answer. Was it meeting a president? Was it interviewing this person or that person? Was it interviewing this celebrity or whatever? And I would just throw different suggestions out there. But I can honestly say, for the very first time in my life, whenever that question is asked of me, what's the biggest story? And my response is now my story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's my story. I didn't ask for this, but I know. And these are not tears of anger or being upset. They're really, believe it or not, they're tears of joy, because this is the biggest story of my entire life, and the one that will help, I believe, to not just make change, but to inspire and to educate other people. And that's what, for me, journalism has always been about. So, again, you're right. We're all generals in this fight together. And I really do believe that collectively, I got my ugly cry on that, but that collectively, I do believe, I really do have hope. And I really believe that we're going to make a change. So, again, just thank you.
We
Thank
are,
you.
I have to tell you, from our point, like our point of view, we were like, Andrea, we have Andrea's on our Well, like, she's gonna do, and we are
You're so
so
sweet.
this organization. No, we're so graced, to have you and to have your voice and to have your story, because people know you. They don't know me. This not maybe now a little bit, but they know you, and that's that carries a lot of weight. And again, as we started off earlier saying today, um, we both said, "Okay, God, really?" But really, really,
Yeah.
It's
Really.
us.
I think because he knew that we would go through the fire. He
Mhm.
trusts us. He knew that we were the ones to be part of this collective, to push the agenda, because that's what he wants for all of us, is
Mhm.
for all of us to thrive in every aspect of our lives.
Mhm.
He knew that we would be the ones to take it over, to take it
Mhm.
over the hurdle and to go across
Mhm.
the finish line.
Mhm.
So I say thank you. I thank you. I don't resist it anymore. I just say, okay, God. I wake up every morning and say, what's next? What's today? What do you want me to do to continue
Mhm.
to push this agenda forward? So
Mhm.
I think that's why we were chosen. We were
Mhm.
chosen.
I know, and sometimes I'm like, I still say, "Really?" You know?
Really?
But,
I
yeah,
know.
it's it no, it and even today before this, I would just always and sometimes before I sit and write, I just say, "All right, just give me what I need. Give me what I need because I don't have it. I know you do. Just give it to me." You know?
Give it to
And
me. Exactly. Thank you so, so very much. And we will continue to work with the EWA, continue to push the WPSA, and get as many people as possible involved in this mission. Thank you.
I'm so excited. This is amazing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the show with others. I'll see you next week.